Naperville. Oh, I'm going to start over. Hello and welcome, everybody. I'm Gail Ryan with the League of Women Voters of Naperville. Thank you for joining us for this evening's Ideas Forum, an insider's look at Vote 411 with Megan Brown. She is the Vote 411 Senior Manager with the League of Women Voters of the United States. But before I introduce Megan, I just have a few housekeeping items to review. If you would please stay muted during the presentation, and you can go ahead and type any questions you have during the meeting in the chat, and then we'll review those at the end with Megan after her presentation. And first, let me just introduce Megan, and I will turn things over to her. So as Vote 411 Senior Manager, Megan manages and maintains the website vote411.org, updating election information in all 50 states and DC. She also helps hundreds of state and local leagues provide candidate information through the online voter's guide. She spreads the word about the website to ensure that voters know where to find the election information they need for Election Day. Megan has a dual degree in political science and CLEG, which is Communications, Legal Institutions, Economics, and Government, from the American University in Washington, D.C. After graduation, she worked in the environmental nonprofit world, first at the Sierra Club and then at the Defenders of Wildlife, before joining the League in 2012. Her work at the League has highlighted her passion for creating a better informed and more active voting populace, and she's thrilled to be able to play an active role in this field. And when not at work, Megan can be found exploring with her husband and 2 young sons, swimming on her master's swim team, or thinking of any excuse to go shopping at Costco. So please join me in welcoming Megan Brown. And Megan, I am going to turn things over to you.
Perfect. Thanks, Gail, and thanks everybody for joining me tonight. I'm so excited to talk to you all about the vote411.org website. As Gail said in my bio, I've been working at LWV US since 2012, and I've actually spent that entire 12 years working on Vote 411. I really love this project, this website, this program, and I've really loved seeing it grow and evolve over the last 12 years and seeing where it is today and how many people were able to help actually turn out to vote and be informed voters. So this presentation is going to be a high-level overview in what everything Vote 411 has to offer voters, as well as information on how you, either as league members or as the general public, can help increase candidate information that we have on the website, as well as how you can promote Vote 411 and share with your friends and family. So with that, let me move my slide deck along. So what is Vote 411? So the League has actually had an online election information website since 1999. The first website we had was called DNet or DemocracyNet, and that transitioned into Vote 411 in 2006. So since 2006, the League has had Vote 411 as our quote unquote one-stop shop for election-related information for voters. We have every piece of information the voters need to know to successfully cast their ballot in all 50 states and DC. Since 2006, we have served tens of millions of voters and getting them the information that they need. In 2020, we started providing all of the information outside of the candidate information, which I'll get to in a little bit, in both English and Spanish. We are the only election website out there that has information in all 50 states and DC and is in English and Spanish. We really wanted to include the Spanish language information because election rules can be complicated, even for people who speak English as a first language. And trying to navigate all the different rules and processes in all 50 states and DC can be really difficult for folks who do not speak English as a first language. So we are really excited to have this information available for all voters in English and Spanish. I like to call Vote 411 kind of as a choose your own adventure for election information. We don't know why voters are coming to the website. It's really going to depend on where we are in the election cycle for their state, what their needs are. Have they moved? Are they a student? Are they first-time voter? Are they looking for candidate information? We know the main things that voters are looking for, and it's who's on their ballot, are they registered to vote, and where's their polling place. But we also know, because we're the league, that there are a lot of rules out there in all the states on how you can vote. Do you need ID in order to cast a vote or to register? Are you able to vote early in person or early absentee? Are there criteria that you need to meet in order to vote absentee in your state? There are all these different circumstances in order to successfully cast your ballot, and we have all that information available, again, for all voters in all 50 states and DC in both English and Spanish. So some of the key features that we have on Vote for 111, these are the main things that people are looking for. Our nationwide candidate information. We are unique in the way that we provide candidate information for voters. Our state and local leagues across the country reach out to candidates, ask them questions that are important to the candidates and the voters in their state or in their community, and then the candidates answer those questions in their own words. We do not edit those responses. Half the time, I even recommend you don't even look at the responses for the candidates, and we let the candidates speak directly to the voters. How candidates want to answer our questions matter, whether that is not answering the question at all, pivoting away from the topic, or answering directly and saying where they stand on these issues. We are not out there looking at candidate websites to try to paraphrase where they stand on the issues. We are really here allowing candidates to speak directly to you, the voters in their communities, and then the voters can take those responses and determine who is the most qualified for that specific office. We also have polling place locations. During COVID times, it was a mess, if you all remember, where polling locations were closed because they were either at schools or they were at homes for the elderly, and it wasn't safe for people to go to those polling locations. We were updating the polling locations on Vote for 111 constantly, and we have them so that they are address specific. So users are able to enter their address on the website and see what their specific polling locations are. The polling locations are not turned on year round, and when they are not available for that address specific, we do have links to the Secretary of State websites where you can actually find your polling location if you want to, if you're like way out from an election. If you were to look for a polling place right now in Illinois, you would only find the link to the Secretary of State's office because you are well away from the November election at this time. We also have an online voter registration tool where voters can enter their information, determine if they are eligible to register to vote online in the states that have online registration, or complete the mail registration form. We then email the voters who have the mail registration form, and we send them the location and the address where they need to mail their application, because they are not registered to vote if they just fill out the mail form. And then we send them reminders telling them that they still need to submit that registration. But then there's all of the other information that voters need to know, like I had mentioned, like the ID requirements, absentee ballots, information on ballot measures. Those are really big in the past couple of years. They play a really big role in the lives of people in your states. So we have the ballot measure information, early voting, all of the things. We have so much information on Vote 411 that we are constantly adding new information, new features, and updating the information as election rules change. As I had mentioned, we do have that registration tool, and our registration tool is also can be used as a get out the vote tool. So in order to access a registration tool, we do ask that users enter their email address and their zip code. Like I said, we do email the users the information that they need so that they can successfully cast their registration. But they also have the ability to opt in to receive emails from the League of Women Voters if they want to. So there's a check mark that they can check if they would like to receive communication. For people who receive those communications, we know that they increase turnout, and that is our goal. Our goal is to ensure that every single eligible voter is able to vote on or before Election Day. And that is what we want. We want you to be able to turn out to vote. And if that means we send you an email that says, November is coming, make sure that you have your voting plan and you're prepared to cast your ballot, we know that works and it turns people out. I also have an image here that has the have you made your voting plan? The voting plan messaging is really what works for voters, making sure that they know what they're going to do and they can visualize how they are going to cast their ballot. Have they verified that their registration is current and accurate? If not, have they registered to vote? Do they know how they're going to vote? Are they going to vote early, absentee, or in person on election day? Do they know who they're going to vote for? Have they gone through their candidates and seen where they stand on the issues and how they answered our questions? Do they know how they're going to vote on those ballot measures? And then have they shared their plan with their friends and their family? Really making sure that you are sharing that this is how I'm going to go vote. Come vote with me this way, or make your plan, is really key in helping enhance that turnout. Really, it's the rule of three. So if you've got your voting plan, then go share that with 3 people. And once you've shared that with 3 people, have them each share it with 3 people, and it spirals. And then you really can increase the turnout for all elections. Most people know and care about the November general elections, but at the League, we cover every single election in the states, no matter how small. So if it's a small local special election, we provide information on that. If it's a primary election, we provide information on that. If it's just a municipal election, all elections are equally as important, and really making sure that we have that message out to voters so that we can ensure that everyone's making their voice heard in all elections in their state. So I kind of touched on this briefly on the polling place information, but we do have personalized information for voters. So voters have the option to, when they go to VOTE411, they can click on, we have a map, and you can click on your state, and that will give you all of your state specific election rules about absentee, early, ID, all the things I've been mentioning. Or you can enter your address on the homepage. And if you enter your address, we are able to serve you with your personalized candidate and ballot information so that you see all of the races and candidates that are going to appear on your specific ballot. And we're able to provide you, like I had mentioned, with your personalized polling place. We need to have your address to determine which districts you live in so that we can show which races and candidates and polling location that you have for your specific address. We do not save that address. We cannot access that address. It is literally only used to serve up this personalized information. Really having the candidate information tied to your address takes the guesswork out of which district you live in, which candidates are going to appear on your ballot. So I've been doing this work for 12 years. This is my career. I could not tell you which city council district I live in. If I don't know my districts, average Joe voter does not know which districts they live in. And there are some obscure districts. There are like water abatement, mosquito abatement, there's pool districts in Nevada. There are some districts that you just don't know where your house lies and who's going to appear on your ballot. So we've taken that guesswork out. Voters can enter their address and literally see only the races and candidates on their own ballot. I live in Colorado. We're a vote by mail state. When I am going to vote, I literally have my ballot next to me. I go through VOTE411. I go in order because the races are in order, and I make my selection for my candidates right there because all the information is there and I don't have to sift through anything that is not relevant to me. When you get your candidate information, you can, in my example here on this slide, I've got all my animals. You can compare you can read one candidate's responses, you can compare 2 candidates, you can compare 4 candidates, you can look at all the candidates side by side to see how they've responded to our questions. You also can see here that you have the option to select my choice. That is who you are choosing to vote for in that race. At the end of the process, you have the ability to print out your selections so that you can either print to a PDF to send yourself an email, or you can print out actually a piece of paper to bring with you to the polls. In some states, you are not able to have your phone in the voting booth. So being able to have that paper where you've literally said, here, I am going to vote for Jimmy Bean in my animal example race, and you have it on your piece of paper when you go to actually cast your ballot. It's quick, it's easy, you've made the informed decision. You feel like you're ready to go and make that vote and make it quickly and easily. So a little kind of more in the weeds on what the voter guide piece. So we Vote411 is the signature project of the League of Women Voters that really allows us to meet our mission in every community across the country, even where leagues do not exist. And the League's mission is really to defend democracy. That is our goal. And the way that we're going to do that is to turn out people to make their voice heard, because that's what democracy is, making sure everybody has equal opportunity to cast their vote and make their voice heard. But we have leagues in about 750 communities across the country. But so that means that we have areas where there are no leagues. And Vote411 provides information and gets the league's name and league's branding out in these communities, regardless of if they have a state or a local league in their community. The voter guide project on Vote411 is co-created between local, state, and national leagues. So I am working with state and local leagues all across the country. There's about 1,700 volunteers that I am working with this year to provide this candidate information for the voters on Vote411. We're constantly updating it. We are adding new features. I haven't quite announced it publicly yet, but we are adding campaign finance information for federal candidates before the November election on Vote411 in the candidate information. So we are working on updating the technology to make sure that that is up and running as soon as possible. So we are constantly adding new features because we know voters are looking for this information. Like I said, we've got 1,700 volunteers from about 500 state and local leagues all across the country working together on this one league program. It's really amazing to see that the power of league, when we all work together, how we can really ensure that we're getting the information that voters need, where they're looking for it, which is online. Voters are going to Google where do I vote in November? And Vote411 is going to come up. And so they're searching for their polling place. But when they get there, they'll see, oh, I can vote absentee, or oh, I need to have my ID, or oh, look here, I've got our candidate information. So regardless of how they're coming and the information that they're looking for, they will be able to find everything else that they need on the website. And it really is great to see the leagues as we work together and what we can accomplish. We are providing information on tens of thousands of candidates every election cycle, which is just, it's a lot. It's a lot of work and it's a lot of information. And we are so successful because we're all working together. So just some information on the Google Analytics for the website. So I pulled out Illinois numbers. When I was creating this slide deck, I was doing it last week. So that's why it's only through August 6th. But so far, from January 1st through August 6th of this year, over 163,000 people from Illinois have looked at Vote411. When we're trying to determine, the number of people who are coming to Vote411 compared to previous cycles, we actually look at the most comparable election cycle. So for 2024, we're in a presidential election cycle. So we compare to the last presidential election cycle, which was in 2020. So I pulled the numbers from January 1st to December 31st in 2020, and that entire calendar year, 151,000 people from Illinois looked at Vote411. So you're 8 months into the year, not even covering the general election where we tend to see the highest traffic, and you've already surpassed the number of people who are looking for this information this year compared to the 2020 cycle, which is fantastic. And that just means that the work that we're putting in on publicizing and providing the information and the branding and the name recognition and all of the work that the local leagues are doing in Illinois is working. People are finding Vote411 at a higher rate than they were in 2020. the 2022 election cycle, I didn't put the numbers here, but I think you had 180 some odd thousand voters. So you're well on your way to surpassing that. You have not surpassed the entire calendar year of 2022 yet, but you're well on your way. And I have zero doubt that you will surpass that with the November election coming up. We do tend to see the most traffic in September, October, and then obviously early November. So you will see tens of thousands of more people coming to the website. I do have suggestions later on in the slide deck on how you can help promote Vote411 to really make sure that your friends and your family and your neighbors all know about the website and know to find their information. And we could really see these numbers skyrocket if everybody is out there doing their part and sharing. Again, you just have to share with 3 people and they share with 3 people and it really spirals. It's really amazing. And it just kind of as a little bit of information as to why we compare to previous cycles is that for those of you who don't know, every single year elections are different in the states, but they tend to follow a 4-year cycle. So like I said, we're at a presidential cycle this year. Next year is more of a municipal local elections. You all in Illinois are a little bit unique in the number of races you have on the ballot next year. Some states don't even have elections in odd years. And then we have what we call the federal cycle, which is where you have, federal races on the ballot, but not in all states, but it's not a presidential year. And then you again follow a municipal cycle. So it would not be comparing apples to apples if we compared 2024 to 2023, because the types of races and again, that interest in the election cycle really does vary cycle to cycle. All right, so what do voters say about Vote411? So we have a voter information inbox where voters email us and tell us what they think about the website, and they ask us questions and we provide information for them. But here, I'm not going to read them all, but here are just some quotes about what people have been saying about Vote411 and why they use it and how it was helpful for them. I don't think I put it in here, but we had a email come in recently where this woman said that she thought Vote411 was literally the best use of the internet, full stop. If she had to go online, it was to go look at Vote411 to find her candidate information. But it's really encouraging to really hear from the voters that we are helping them. We're helping them through this process. We're helping them make informed decisions. And it just shows us that what we're doing is working and it's having an impact and it is helping, again, serve our mission of defending democracy. But we're also contacting tens of thousands of candidates and asking them questions. So again, I'm not going to read these, but these are what we hear from candidates who we've done outreach to, and what they think about Vote411. Really being able to talk to voters in their own words is helpful to candidates. It is free publicity for the candidates. They get to just answer a handful of questions, 3 to 5 questions, write a couple paragraphs about where they stand on important issues, and they get to have their information out in front of millions of voters, and they get to speak directly to them. It's really useful for candidates to answer our questions. One thing that I don't think I touched on earlier about our candidate information is because we work with the state and local leagues, we're working with people who live in these communities and know the issues that voters in your communities care about. And so we're able to have the leagues ask these candidates questions about issues that are actually important to their own communities. Like I said, I live in Colorado. I don't know what the biggest issues are in Illinois, so I wouldn't be able to come up with questions to ask these candidates, but you all live in Illinois. You know what the issues are, you know what the voters care about, and you're able to ask those really pointed questions of these candidates, and then candidates are able to answer again and speak directly to the voters. And then, as I said, I'm working with about 1,700 volunteers across the country this year. And this is a couple of quotes about why they're doing this work. And really, when it boils down to it is This is what the League does. We have been creating voter guides for voters since 1920. It obviously started in paper and has then kind of moved on to internet. But this is what we do. This is really integral to our mission and our history and how we interact with the voting populations in this country is by providing election information and candidate information to the voters, again, so that they can feel empowered to cast their ballots. All right, so because we rely on candidates to answer our questions directly, and we do not provide any additional information about those candidates if they don't answer our questions, a standard sentence is published that says the candidate has not yet responded. So that's what voters will see. Because we do it this way, we do have some candidates who do not answer our questions. And that's where leagues and the general public can really get involved with this program and try to increase candidate response rates. Ideally, we would have a 100% response rate. That really does not happen for the most part across the country. I did get an email from some admin volunteers in Florida that they actually got 100% response rate for their local community for their primary that's coming up next week or the following week, which is fantastic. And that's amazing that they're able to do that. But for the most part, you're not going to get 100% responses. I cover the presidential candidates, and for the primary election, I did not get all presidential candidates to answer our questions. So some ideas that we have for how you can increase the response rates. Some of these are internal for the League volunteers who are utilizing the program. And they're really things like, how are you asking the candidates the questions? Are they leading or are they biased questions? Or are you just asking the candidates where they stand on the issues? Really making sure that you aren't giving candidates the opportunity to read your questions, think that they're biased, and then opt to not respond. You really want to just ask them the question. So if you want to ask about where a candidate stands on gun control, you would ask, where do you stand on the issues of gun control? You wouldn't say 95% of the people in your district believe that everyone should own a gun. How do you feel about gun control? Because that is kind of a biased and leading question for those candidates. And then really thinking about how you are inviting these candidates to participate. Is your email communication easy to understand? Is it easy to find where they submit their responses? Really thinking through how you're having those communications with the candidates, which leads to that second bullet point is candidate communication. You can call candidates and say, hey, we sent you this email to this email address on this date. Want to make sure you found it. If you didn't, is there a better email that we should send you? When we're calling candidates, oftentimes they'll tell us to please text them. They're really busy and texting is a lot easier than answering the phone. So if you have candidate cell phone numbers, some candidate filings have cell phone numbers, some don't. But if you have them, send them a quick text and say, we sent you an email, make sure you found it, answer our questions. In the past, when I've gotten, texts from campaigns, I get random campaign text for some person named Caleb who lives in Florida. And I usually just respond and say, I'm not Caleb. But if it's for a candidate that I know that we have contacted and we don't have their responses, I will respond to those texts and say, hey, I'm not Caleb, but I want your candidate to answer questions on VOTE411. And I've actually had success in having back and forth communication with people through text in the campaign that way. So kind of getting creative for how you're contacting campaigns. If you are participating in the voter guide program, really look at the races and the candidates that you're covering to try to prioritize who you want to really try to contact to make sure that you've got 100% participation. So if you're covering 500 races and 1,000 candidates, it's going to be much more difficult to really focus on all 1,000 of those candidates. But if you look at your races and you try to find where you have really a hotly contested race, is there a race that really it's a toss-up? You don't know who's going to win. or it's a really important district for the state legislature, or even the US House, really trying to determine which races do you really want to focus in on, and then focus your candidate outreach and your what we call the candidate pressure campaign to try to increase responses in those races first. If that kind of helps with capacity, you can continue with the outreach, the general outreach that we do to all candidates in all the races, but you can really look into calling or texting the campaigns in specific races that you're most interested in. And really making sure that you're utilizing the data and the analytics. So I have Google Analytics on how many people from Illinois, as we saw in that previous slide, have looked at the candidate or at the information on VOTE411. That's really helpful for candidates to know. Why is it important for them to answer our question? What do they get out of it? Because it could take them 15 to 20 minutes to answer our questions, depending on how many there are and how long of response we allow. But really, why is that important? And that's important because you're going to be reaching hundreds of thousands of people in your state with, again, that information that you're speaking directly to them. Leaning on relationships. So at the league, we often have partners that we work with that we could say, hey, can you help make sure that we've got the candidate responses? Can you help text campaigns? Oftentimes, since we live in the communities, you all know people who work on these campaigns. You might even know the candidates. I had a league person mention to me that they got a candidate to answer the question because their dentist was a candidate's neighbor. And when they went for their teeth cleaning, they were talking about the work on VOTE411, and it turned out that he's the neighbor. And they were like, oh, you need to tell him to answer the questions. And the dentist did. And then that candidate answered the questions. So really, relationships, you're all in the community, you know these people, that you're going to be the biggest kind of help to try to get these responses. And then finally, take it public. Make sure that the public knows that these candidates haven't answered our questions and that voters deserve to know where candidates stand on these issues. And I will share this slide deck after the fact, but we've got a page on VOTE411 that has helpful information on how you can take it public, messages that you can use to contact candidates on their social media, ways that you can really put it out there that we want candidates to answer our questions. And really, if you've got enough people who can make enough noise for the candidate around this, we have seen that it is very successful in getting candidate responses. So here are some emails that I received from candidates after we did some pressure campaign work. And oftentimes the emails will be like, I was told by 5 people that I need to answer your questions. How do I answer your questions? It's really not even a huge number of people that need to make the difference, but they find a way to reach out to me, and we usually will send them to their state or local league volunteers, or help them get access to their profile so they can submit their responses. But the fun thing is voters really like the pressure campaign as well. So we have seen that people just in the public writing letters to the editor about candidates not answering questions on VOTE411. There we have seen the last quote here was a league put out a news article announcing that they had published VOTE411 and calling on candidates who had not answered the questions to answer the question. And after reading that article, a voter took it upon themselves to contact the candidates and ask them to answer the questions, which is really all we want. The candidates need to hear from you, the people who will be voting for them, that you want to know where they stand on these issues. Like they've heard from the league oftentimes a dozen times by this point. And if they still haven't answered our questions, sometimes it just takes a handful of people to do the work. And really, again, getting that information and ensuring that voters have all the information they need about the candidates is really key. I didn't put any quotes on here, but we are oftentimes getting emails from voters who tell us that they may have been leaning towards a specific candidate, and then they came to VOTE411 and that candidate didn't answer our questions. And in that voter's mind, if the candidate didn't appreciate the league enough to take time to answer our questions, the voter then thought, well, maybe they might not be the best candidate for the job. So oftentimes a non-response on Vote for 1-1 is still a response for voters, because those candidates, are they going to be as responsive as an elected official to the needs of the people in their community? Just people who know the league and love our work, know how much work we put into it. And so really, if a candidate doesn't answer our questions, it can be seen as a type of response for some of the voters. Again, in a perfect world, we would have 100% participation. But yeah, it's not going to happen for every single voter guide, unfortunately. But those are some ways that you can help kind of increase that information for the voters. And then finally, like I've said, really making sure that voters in the community know about this resource. So there's a lot of information online. There's election information online, but can you trust the election information online? Vote for 1-1 is a known brand. The League of Women Voters is a known and trusted brand and resource for election information. We are nonpartisan. We never endorse or support or oppose candidates or parties. Our mission is to just make sure that voters have the information that they need to cast their ballot. And really making sure that people know the Vote for 1-1 is a trusted resource for all elections, not just general elections, is key to helping inform the voting population. So there's just some tips here for how you can promote, either as a league individual or just a person who lives in your community, how you can promote Vote for 1-1. So as the league, we have a lot of promotional templates, toolkits, social media posts. We have a lot of branded materials already that you can use on your league social media pages. You can put up posters around your community. There's lots of opportunities, and you don't have to recreate the wheel. We've already created them. Our amazing communications department has created all of these templates that you can just use and put up around your community. But really, you can also get creative. We've had a couple of leagues who have partnered with like local breweries in their community. One of them had the brewery print Vote for 1-1 coasters that they put out in all of October. Another one had a Vote for 1-1 co-branded beer where a portion of the proceeds for that beer went back to the local league, while they also had Vote for 1-1 on the beer can. There are some really fun, creative ideas that you can use to promote Vote for 1-1 in your community. Going to farmers markets, you can have a registration table. There's lots, anywhere you're going in your community, you can promote Vote for 1-1. We also have merchandise for sale that you can find on our merch portal. So things like buttons and stickers. I am working with our communications team to try to add additional items there. We have postcards so that you can mail postcards about Vote for 1-1. I want to get yard signs in the merch portal. I want to get t-shirts in the merch portal. There's so many things that I want in the merch portal. But we do have some items there for you to purchase. You can also make your own promotional items. So if you don't want to use any of the templates that we've used and created, you don't want to purchase any of our merchandise, you can create your own. We do have brand standards that we ask you to follow, and it's really just to protect the Vote for 1-1 brand. And what we are hoping for is to have consistent branding across the country. So for those of you who are league members, you know that Dr. Turner was a previous national board president, and she always said that she wanted Vote for 1-1 to be a household name. And the way that we get Vote for 1-1 a household name is to make sure that we're promoting it, but that we also have brand consistency. So when you're looking at products. Like if you look at Coca-Cola and you just see the brand, you know it's Coca-Cola because there's consistency and it's following standards. We want that same thing for Vote for 11, so that if you see like these buttons, the Vote for 11 logo, you know exactly what that is because you've got that brand recognition. And the way we do that is by following our brand standards. The candidate pressure campaign that I just talked about is also a great way to promote Vote for 11. You can write letters to the editor saying that the league has published their candidate information on Vote for 11, and if candidates have not answered our questions, we're calling on all candidates to answer our questions. Voters deserve to know where you stand on the issues. Publicizing it through social media, you can tweet at the candidates, calling them out publicly, saying, answer our questions. You can put it on Facebook, anywhere that you're talking publicly about the information that we have is going to, one, increase candidate responses, and two, make sure voters know that the information is available on Vote for 11. And really knowing your audience and where to meet them when you're doing your promotion. So at the National League, we do paid advertising on Meta, which is Facebook and Instagram. We are also doing Snapchat this year, and we're also doing YouTube. And all of our ads that we are running are very different depending on the platform that we are running them on. And then we also have English advertising and Spanish advertising. And our Spanish advertising is very different from our English advertising because we know that the audiences are different and on each of these platforms and for each of these languages. And knowing how to communicate with people and how to share our information is going to increase the likelihood that they will actually click on that ad to go to Vote for 11. And like I said, you can get creative and find really fun partnerships. If you are creative and you find really fun partnerships, please let me know what those partnerships or promotional opportunities are so that I can share them with our volunteers across the country. Because again, we're all working towards that same goal and we want to have everyone across the country know about the website. So there's no reason for one state to do it one way and another state to do it another way. We could all share that information with each other. I love hearing some of the things that people have come up with. A league in Tennessee had table toppers that they worked with multiple restaurants in their community. And they had table toppers that said, while you wait for your food, are you registered to vote? And there was a QR code where people could scan it and check their registration or register to vote. They also had ones that are, while you wait for your food, you know who's on your ballot. And there's a QR code that links to Vote for 11 so that people could actually go through their candidate information while you're sitting at the table waiting for your food. And it's just it's a great, oftentimes free way to get information in front of the voters and to work in your community. So that's also a really fun idea. Your promotions can be paid. You can do kind of the Meta advertising or the Snapchat advertising, or you can do that unpaid stuff, which is working with the restaurants in your community. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money to promote Vote for 11. Again, if you just tell 3 people that you've made your voting plan, have they made theirs? And once they have, share with 3 people, you've promoted the website for free and really had a snowball effect. And then really kind of looking at your election calendar in your state. So every state's election calendar is very different, but you want to determine what you're going to be promoting for Vote for 11 so that you are promoting things at the right time. So right now, we really want to be focusing on registration. We want to make sure that everyone is registered to vote before the registration deadline. Once the registration deadline passes, you want to kind of pivot to promoting the early and absentee voting information on Vote for 11. And then you want to pivot to the candidate information on Vote for 11. And then you want to pivot to the Make Your Voting Plan. So you're going to have different messages kind of depending on where you are in the election cycle. But again, all of them can link back to Vote for 11 because we have all the information no matter where voters are in that election cycle, and they can find everything that they need. And then finally, I have a team. There's not a lot of us. There are 4 of us total who are working on Vote for 11, but we really are here to ensure that the information is correct, it's accurate, The website's working. You have everything that you need. The candidates have everything they need. The voters have everything they need. And we are really here to help everybody. If you ever have any questions about Vote for 1-1, or any Vote for 1-1 related information you're looking for, we have an email address here that all of us access. You're welcome to send us an email with any questions. And with that, that's the end of my presentation, Gail.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. We do have a couple of questions, so why don't we start with those, and then I'll just have a few questions to wrap us up. But I'll remind folks, if you do have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat, but we've got a couple already. Maury had a good question. He says, how predictable is it when the voter guides will be available on Vote411? The reason I ask is I just put my address in and it said there are no races at this time. It'd be useful if it said instead, check back on X date when information for the November 5th election will be available. And reminding us that voting starts in Illinois on September 26th. So is there any option to change that message that appears when we type our address in right now?
So right now, that standard message, there's no races at this time, that's standard for all 50 states and DC. So it's not actually tied to your address. It's just tied to the fact that there's no information currently published for that address.
Okay.
In one of our future enhancements, we would love to have a message that we could have you update as the league volunteer and say, we will be publishing on September 25th. I will say that most leagues tend to publish as soon as people can start voting.
Right.
Like that is what I always recommend for your publication date, that you look at your calendar and you see when can people start voting. So in Illinois, people start voting on September 26th. So you want to have your information published September 26th at the latest, because average Joe voter isn't thinking about voting until they can go vote. So they're not looking for the information at this time, for the candidate information. They are probably looking for their registration information. But one of our future enhancements will hopefully be so that you can edit that information. We have had a couple of leagues who really wanted to have the information visible to voters at all time. And if you know your publication date, this is kind of in the weeds for people who are working on the program, but you can create a race that is a publication timeline. And when you publish that race, it could say, we will be publishing on September 25th. Come back to find your information. And that's totally possible. I don't have the example kind of pulled up in this presentation, but our Florida League put actually a bunch of voting information in their voting guide. So they had like the early voting dates, because in Florida, every single county can set their own early voting timeline. So they have different days and different weeks and different hours, and it's a mess. But that is something that the leagues can do. We tried to be generic with our message to encourage people to come back later, closer to the election date. But at the moment, that generic message is going to appear for all addresses until you publish.
Okay. And for those on the call that are in either the Naperville area or many of the DuPage County area leagues are using Vote411. And we, as a group, I know, are targeting to be published in time for early voting on September 26th. So that's kind of our goal. Because one of the other things we looked to do is verify what we have on Vote411 against the county's sample ballots. And those often aren't available until, just before early voting. So we like to be able to compare our information against the county ballots, just to make sure that we're accurate before we publish as well. But you should be able to find it come early voting period. And then another question is just to verify, in preparation for the November 5th election, when I type in my Naperville address, will I see questions and answers for the national candidates in addition to those for my local candidates?
So yes, I cover the presidential race. So that will be published for everybody. My hopefully publication date is actually going to be September 19th. And we actually create 51 different presidential races because every single state has different candidates on their ballot for president. So that will be published. And so when you enter your Naperville address, you will see president first. Following that, it will be the information that Gail just mentioned that their leagues are working on. That's going to be the federal and state legislative and then down ballot candidates. So I only cover presidents and I do it for everybody across the country. And then the state and local leagues work in their communities so that they're able to provide kind of the further down ballot races. But yeah, once we publish that president, every single person in the country who enters an address will at the very least see that presidential information until the local volunteers publish their information, again, on that rolling basis, depending on where they are on their election cycle. You all are lucky that you have a very long voting timeline. Not every state has long early voting or early voting in general. So each state kind of publishes on a different timeline. But yes, you will see the national federal candidates as well.
And so again, then we'll cover U.S. congressional, state and Senate and House races, county races, even referendum that would be on the ballot should all appear in Vote 411 when you access that. Another question was, you mentioned that you update state and election rules like for that information portion of Vote 411. How does that happen? Because that's got to be daunting to know and keep up with all the state rules.
Yeah, so every state, NDC, has like 18 to 20 what we call rules of the road. So those are the early voting, the absentee voting, the ID, all of those things, and they are state specific. And it's every single legislative session, there are often changes to those rules. So in some states, they will allow for early voting, or they will take away the criteria needed for absentee voting, or they will change the ID that is needed and that is acceptable. So my team, we spend a lot of time following the legislative sessions so that we can track the bills that are going through in those sessions to determine which of those have passed, and then when the election laws go into effect. So Vote for 1-1 is only updated when those rules go into effect. So oftentimes, like the end of the legislative session is in May, but new laws don't go into effect until July 1st. So we would not update Vote for 1-1 until July 1st when the new rules go into effect. And so we spend a lot of time going through these. Oftentimes there are legal challenges. So if a rule goes into effect and then it's challenged, then we have to change it back. But we really pride ourselves on the accuracy of the information on Vote for 1-1. And oftentimes we will have our information updated before the Secretary of State has their information updated. And so we kind of find this information through the legislative session that we're tracking, but then also through the state and local leagues that we're talking with all the time. So oftentimes leagues will email me and they'll be like, hey, Megan, the legislature just said this ID is no longer valid. Can we please update Vote for 1-1? So you're all in the weeds. You live in the community, and we are more than happy for you to email us and tell us if something changes. But we spend a lot of time tracking it because it's really important that voters have that accurate information so that, again, they are prepared and feel empowered and like that they're able to go cast their ballot. And we do translate all of the updates into Spanish as well. And we do get the Spanish information up at the same time as English so that both languages are equally accurate. So we wouldn't update English and then update Spanish later. They are both updated at the same time. So it's basically having two different websites in two different languages with information that is changing constantly. So it really keeps our team on our toes, but we really do pride ourselves on the accurate information that we provide on the website.
Okay. You mentioned that you're going to be adding or looking to add finance information for state or for the federal races. So will that appear in like the race description area, or where will voters find that information?
Yeah, so that's going to live in the candidate information. There's currently
Hmm.
3 different sections. So it's going to have the race description section that has what this office is, what the duties are, all of that stuff. Currently, there is the biographical information. So that is the candidate's social media, websites, all that stuff. And then there's what we call race questions, which are the questions that the leagues are asking the candidates to answer. The campaign finance information is going to be a 4th kind of section for those candidates. And so it's going to appear for federal candidates for this cycle. We are hoping to expand it to down ballot candidates. But because every single state is different, they have data in different formats. So we stuck with the federal, and it's going to be its own kind of section that you can toggle on, toggle off, and it's going to have graphs of top contributors and top industries. There's going to be a link to where you can find additional information, but it'll be completely integrated into the candidate information that the voters are seeing. So I'm really excited. This is something that we have been wanting to add to Vote for 1-1, because knowing who is donating to candidates can help show candidates, where they stand on specific issues. And it's just additional information for voters to know who's supporting these candidates or who's opposing these candidates. So yeah, it'll just integrate seamlessly into the information that voters are seeing.
Great, great. I don't see other questions at this point, and I know we're almost up to our hour time. So actually, speaking of doing commercials, I'll do a small commercial for the League of Women Voters in Naperville, and I know a couple other the DuPage area leagues have done this as well. But we do have Vote for 1-1 yard signs, a new design for this year, and each league might be handling things a little differently. But for Naperville, if there are Naperville League members on the call that are interested in displaying a yard sign during election season, let us know. You can let us know on the website, or you can email me, and we'd be happy to get you a sign to put out in your yard and let your friends and neighbors know about Vote 411 for this election season. And once again, want to thank Megan. Thank you for your time tonight and sharing the news of Vote 411. It's about to heat up and get busy as we get the guide ready for the new election season. So if you enjoyed this event tonight and appreciate the League of Women Voters of Naperville's community and civic work, consider joining us. To do so, you can just go to our website at the Join Us page on lwvnaperville.org. And if you're not already a member, we'd love to have you as a member. And as Election Day approaches, we're going to be busy with voter education, voter registration, and get out the vote activities in the community. So we'd love to have you volunteer to help, or you can look for us at the Naperville Labor Day Parade in downtown Naperville on September 2nd. And we'll be at the Naperville Pride event at Naper Settlement on September 14th. And you can visit the Voter Resources tab on our website to find key election dates for the November election. So watch the voter newsletter for information about upcoming Get Out the Vote events, candidate forums, which we'll be hosting, and other election season events coming. And be sure to watch for the Vote for 1-1 voter guide to be published around September 26th in time for the start of early voting. And again, as Megan said, you can find it at vote411.org. So thank you all for attending this evening. We appreciate your time. And with that, I'll say thank you once again, Megan, and good night to all.
Thank you, everybody.